Here at the Mazui Arcade, I have everything from retro gaming devices, arcade machines, to modern consoles, modern devices, and everything in between. And so when it comes to purchasing a game console at this point in time, I have to really be able to justify it because I have multiple different ways to play a lot of the games that I'm really into. And so late last year, I decided to finally buy the Nintendo Switch 2, but at that point in time, I was also on the verge of getting a PlayStation 5 instead. Ultimately, of course, and if you watch the recent content, it's no secret that the Switch 2 is what I've been playing a lot of, and it's been the console that I ended up choosing over the PS5, and a lot of that came down to a couple main things for me. And in this video, I'm going to go over what those things are and why ultimately the Nintendo Switch 2 made more sense for me to purchase than the PlayStation 5. So let's take a look. So to start, my first reason for picking the Nintendo Switch 2 over the PlayStation 5 is going to be pretty obvious for a lot of people, but really it comes down to the fact that the Nintendo Switch 2 is portable. Now, I'm aware, you had the previous Nintendo Switch and you have some other devices as well, but ultimately, when I looked at what I got with the Nintendo Switch 2, which was better hardware, and I'm not just talking in terms of visuals, but better hardware in terms of screen size and also more comfortable Joy-Cons, those sorts of things, it made this device to me something that I knew I'd be using a lot. And not just in the fact that it's obviously portable, but having a bigger screen, for example, gave me more reason to want to use things like the tabletop mode when I was out and about or around my house, or even recently when I was at the airport waiting for my plane. Those are things that it might not seem like a big deal to some people, but I felt like I had a console experience, or a modern console experience, I guess is the best way to put it, on a portable device, which is something that the Switch 2 so far is doing really well when it comes to a lot of the multi-platform games. It's not perfect, but we are still in the early stages of the Nintendo Switch 2, but being able to take some of these AAA titles that I enjoy, especially games like Cyberpunk, and being able to experience them when I'm, at an airport or on a plane, to me is something that I really appreciate. And that, for me, was one of the large reasons that I decided the Nintendo Switch 2 is something I wanted to get well over the PS5. Now, the next reason is going to kind of tie into the first reason, but it comes down to not just the portability, but the ability to have that aspect, but also the games. And what I mean is the Nintendo games. The thing about the PS5 and the Xbox is there's a strong move, well, stronger on the Xbox, a little slower on PS5, to multi-platform out a lot of their big titles. And we're seeing that with the Xbox especially, where pretty much everything that's on Xbox is now coming to other consoles, potentially even the Nintendo Switch 2. And the harsh reality of owning a Nintendo-based device is that I highly doubt Nintendo is going to allow any of their major IPs to go on to devices like the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X. So you have the advantage with the Nintendo Switch 2 that you're going to get some of the larger multi-platform games, whether that's coming from Sony or Xbox. For me personally, isn't entirely relevant, but I'm talking third-party games like we got Star Wars Outlaws, Assassin's Creed, those sorts of games. Get those sorts of games as well as Nintendo exclusive games. And I truly do believe that as we transition into the next console generation, if you even want to call it that, you're going to see a lot of these games are going to be a lot less locked to these consoles, with the exception of Nintendo's device. And so what that means is that you're going to see a lot of major first-party Nintendo titles that, unfortunately in some ways, are going to be stuck on the Nintendo Switch 2. And so for me, being able to play a lot of the multi-platform games that I like and appreciate, and being able to get Nintendo exclusives, made a lot of sense for me. In that regard, I felt like the Nintendo Switch 2 had a lot to offer to me personally. And I know for other people that might not be a large enough reason, but so far, I'm really enjoying a lot of the multi-platform games that are on the Nintendo Switch 2, and of course, I'm also really enjoying some of the Nintendo exclusives, and I'm looking forward to some of the larger exclusives as the Nintendo Switch 2 progresses through its lifespan. Now, the third and final reason, and this for some people might seem arbitrary, and this reason is going to be a lot less impactful if you're not in the same situation as me or a similar situation to me, and that's that the Nintendo Switch 2, while it does do a lot of great things, it also still doesn't have every single multi-platform game that I enjoy, and it also doesn't have the best versions in some cases of multi-platform games that I like to enjoy. And I also have an Xbox Series X. So for me, getting a PS5 would just feel like, in a lot of ways, like I was getting just more of the same with a couple more exclusives. And I did talk in previous years, if you followed this channel, about getting a PS5 down the road just for some of the games that it had, but over the years I've seen some of the more interesting games that I've wanted to play on the PS5 make its way to other devices, and in some cases even make its way to my Xbox Series X, which makes the PS5 to me way less appealing. So being an owner of a next-gen console like the Xbox Series X, the Switch 2 filled the gap in a lot of ways where I could play some of the major titles that I liked on the Series X portably, and I also have the ability to play not just those games portably, but also play Nintendo exclusives. And if I really want to delve into a you know, more serious AAA title, typically like a single-player game or like an upcoming Resident Evil 9, I can do that and do that very well on my Xbox Series X. So for me, having the Nintendo Switch 2 just filled a void for some things that I wouldn't be able to do with my Xbox Series X. And I know that there are ways to cloud stream and do those sorts of things on the Series X with varying success depending on where you are, the type of internet connection you have, and those sorts of things. Whereas with the Switch 2, I can natively do those things on some of the bigger multi-platform games that I really do enjoy. And so the way I looked at it was, at this point in time, it gives me the best of both worlds. If I have a multi-platform game, for example, that I don't foresee myself playing portably, like a Silent Hill 2, for example, which isn't on the Switch 2 anyways, but you get what I mean. I can sit there and play that on my Xbox Series X with good graphics and high-end visuals at my gaming setup. Whereas if there's a game, for example, like Cyberpunk, where I find myself going in and out of that game quite a bit, and it's a game that I feel like I can, you know, jump into for an hour while I'm on the go or on a plane, for example, it makes a lot of sense for me to have the Switch 2 and also have the access to the Nintendo library. So those main things to me are really, or those main three things to me are really what pushed me into getting the Nintendo Switch 2 over a PS5. Now, I will say this, if I didn't own an Xbox Series X or the other 1,000 devices I have, I might have still seriously considered the PS5, because I consider in a lot of ways, and some gamers might not like to hear this, I consider the Nintendo Switch 2 kind of like its own thing, but almost like the secondary console for me. And yes, there are some great exclusives that are going to come out on it and that are out on it currently, but when I compare it to my Xbox Series X, which gets the most playtime when I'm home, the Switch 2 really gets the bulk of its playtime for me, usually when I'm on the go, and I do travel a lot, so usually when I'm traveling, and it's not, when I'm at home, it doesn't tend to be the primary system that I play. And so had I not had an Xbox Series X, I may have probably gotten something like the PS5 had that not been the case, but owning that and having the Nintendo Switch 2 really does feel like, in my circumstance, I have the best of both worlds when it comes to just general gaming overall.